when I had finished the tracking, Randy tells me, by the way, Intercore Studio is going to be closing in a couple of weeks. So I came the
Oh
next
boy.
day, and there were little price tags on the
Oh my
equipment.
gosh.
I was joking, like, is there a price tag on the toilet? What is, it's all going away. So Randy Burdell, I let him find another place for us to mix, and he chose Blackberry Way because the replacements had recorded there, and he was
Mhm.
so, the mixing board there was a little old and it was a little cranky. So there was like little pops and stuff like that. And it was all done by, look at me, I'm doing sliders. So I got Jill on that. So we had 6 hands. Yeah, we
In real
had to
time.
have in real time, and we're mixing this down to the digital.
Wow.
Here we go.
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party, your weekly musical happy hour where musicians pick an album from their back catalog and tell the stories behind their favorite tracks in front of a live online audience.
This week we talk with international Autoharp champion Karen Mueller. She revisits her 1993 album Clarity, recounts some wild studio stories about splicing analog tape, and shares photos of her old band wearing cow camouflage. So pour a beverage, grab a snack, and kick back as we listen to music together here on the Back Catalog Listening Party, where it's always Friday and old albums never sounded better. And happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us all the way from the western suburbs of Minneapolis, Karen Mueller.
Hi, everybody.
It is a sunny day here in Minnesota. Feels like summer.
Right.
And so the sun is streaming in at various weird angles on our faces, and it will probably continue to do so throughout the show today as we go. But tell us where you are tuned in from, if the sun is shining, and if you're enjoying a beverage or a snack.
It looks like our friend Chris is outside in Savage, Minnesota. Unbelievable spring weather. Yes, he's enjoying a glass of Pinot Noir. Let's get to some picking. Yeah, you're in for it, Chris. This is going to be a great hour. Our friend Christy from Cambridge. Yep, the skies are clear for Christy and Kermit up in Cambridge. Welcome, both of you. And Susan's chiming in, listening from Brandon, Oregon. So good to have you, Susan.
Yes.
All right.
And
Nice.
yeah, beautiful day out. So I am enjoying I enjoy this beverage all year round, but especially in the summertime, a gin and tonic, this time with some berries in it as well. And Karen, what do you have in your glass with the blue?
I've got a little little G&T based on a blood orange sparkling water and gin from Duluth in my
nice.
Walker Art Center. I'm being totally Minnesota centric.
Very Minnesota. I love it. I love it. The summer beverage is coming out. I'm going to stick with the hazy IPA from Athletic in my back catalog listening party.
I love me some Athletic. This is my blood orange water is my Athletic.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. And Jocelyn sitting on the patio with a glass of white wine. Yep. Summertime vibes, man. We're digging it. And again, thank you for joining the party today. We are very excited to have Karen joining us. And I've known Karen almost as long as I've lived in the Twin Cities. I've been enjoying her music for many years, and not only her own albums, but the contributions she's made to other people's recordings. But for folks who are maybe a little less familiar with your music than me, Karen, maybe you could give a brief origin story of where you grew up and how you fell into making the music you make.
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in Winfield, Kansas, the home of the Walnut Valley Bluegrass Festival, which I started going to when I was a sophomore in high school. I had been playing guitar for a couple of years, brought my guitar out, got to jam with folks, and just got totally stoked. That's where I first saw Brian Bowers playing the Autoharp in a melody style, which totally rocked my universe because I thought it was just like a stupid push a button and strum thing. And I also saw some really awesome dulcimer players, so I started playing dulcimer around that. Now, before that, I had actually played classical piano from like the age of 5 up through 15. So I went to the University of Kansas in Lawrence. Yay, Rock Chalk, hippest place in Lawrence, hippest place in Kansas, uh, and was part of the formation of two really, really awesome bands when I was there. And in '89, I took the leap and I moved up here to Minneapolis and kind of immediately landed in like about 4 different bands and kind of some of the people that we're going to listen to now are part of that kind of original landing kind of a spot here.
Excellent. Wonderful. And the album that we're going to revisit today, Clarity, came out in 1993. Where does this fit in your discography?
So it was the first, I wanted it to be like my first major solo project. Like I said, I'd been involved in bands from '84 to '89 in Lawrence, and had done an EP called Upbeat that I experimented a lot, did some of my current stuff with the people I'd met up here initially, and I'd done a teaching project called Autoharp Gourmet. But this was where I really wanted to put my full creative energy and do my first major solo project right after I'd moved up here to Minneapolis.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, we are excited for some music. What do you say we kick things off with a tune?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first track that you picked to feature is New Joe Clark. I'm guessing this is a take on old Joe Clark.
And you would be correct, Ellen. That's indeed. So one thing that was really helpful to me when I was first getting acquainted with the scene up here was I played at the New Riverside Cafe about once a month or so. And, you're kind of like, some people are listening, some people are kind of coming in and out, 3 hours at a shot. And I developed a lot of my newer material there by just like kind of jamming and seeing what floated. And this was one of the things that kind of came out of that jamming kind of situation.
Excellent. All right. Well, I can't wait to give it a spin. This is Karen Mueller with the new Joe Clark here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
All right. That that's how you kick off an hour of music. Karen Mueller with New Joe Clark from her 1993 album Clarity, which we are revisiting today with Karen joining us live on the show. And if you have any questions or comments for Karen as we go, throw it in the chat. And oh, so great.
Yeah.
Everything about it. The players are top notch. Of course, when we heard that banjo came in, Tony and I both perked up our ears.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
looking at the liner notes, that's not just any banjo player. Can you tell
no,
us who's playing and how that connection was
Oh
made?
yeah. Oh yeah. That would be Mr. Tony Trischka himself.
the goat man.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I met Tony back in '89. I was warming up for a concert he was doing up in Chicago. And then really kind of not again until like 92-ish or so. And I was in Southern California and did a kind of a similar spot at a small music store that I really loved. And so I did a warm up spot and we were doing some stuff together and just jamming around. And actually it was 93. It was actually the spring before I was doing the album. Right.
Hmm.
So, we were doing this and he's like, well, what would you like me to play on in your set? Like, he's a good guy. I was like, well, and I just sort of thought about the 3 songs that ended up being on this album. And I had this arrangement already for the Clark, and he just jumped right on it. We performed it live. And then the one that we're not going to hear today, Norwegian Wood, that I did in a Dave Brubeck Take 5, 5/4 format. And then a really wacky kind of little duet of Blackberry Blossom that we'll hear later. So we did it. We had just a blast playing together. And so when I was planning the album and just trying to map out everything, I thought of these songs and Tony, and I gave him a call and I said, would you consider contributing to this album? And he's like, sure.
Nice.
So he was totally on board. And so we recorded the bass and fiddle and my track. This was, I think we may be revisiting this, but this was recorded on 2-inch analog tape because I really wanted to retain the warmth. I'm just like a real analog kind of freak.
Nice.
So I wanted to do it analog, and then we mastered to digital to make it a CD. So that meant that we recorded our 3 tracks, me and Tom Schaefer on fiddle, Pete Matheson on bass, the core trio we'll talk about here in a bit. We recorded that first on this big old reel-to-reel tape. Okay, yep, here we go. Tom on the fiddle and Pete on the bass. And I FedExed it overnight to Tony's studio, and he came in later in the week and he added his contributions and overnighted it back to me on that reel-to-reel tape.
Well, which is, I mean, important to point out because not only did you have to send it back and forth, and these days people do that all the time. They record remotely, but like when you're mailing out a giant tape, it's heavy and it can get damaged along the way. I mean, there's
Right.
like it's a lot more of an ask than it might seem today.
Yeah.
It's just a little more stressful.
Yeah. And there's a lot of monetary investment involved.
Please let it make it okay. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen some of the boxes that arrive on our doorstep not looking so hot. So I can see why you'd be nervous.
Well, I love it. It sounds so good. And that, that warmth that you get from analog recording is still something that is so coveted. People try to recreate it with, digital plugins and things like that. But there is just some kind of mojo that happens when it hits tape.
Yeah.
And you can certainly hear it here. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
Great.
And also it's you're also more likely to capture some of that live energy because you're not as quickly to be like, oh, we'll just punch something in later. You're going to be like, no, if we're going to redo something, we're going to really redo it. So
yeah, we'll have to have a little conversation later about our mixing sessions at Blackberry Way. That was super intense because it was all like in real time with like real slider levers.
Nice.
Wow.
I look forward to hearing about that. But first, I just want to say that, okay, so for those who aren't familiar with Tony Trischka, he really is one of the best banjo players in the world. taught Bela Fleck how to play banjo. I mean, this guy is the real deal. But hearing your auto harp playing next to his, it was like on the exact same level. And I was like you, when I first encountered an auto harp in grade school, and it was push the button and play the thing, but I was hearing all these melodic notes and chromatic notes and all this stuff, just like, we might be used to hearing on the banjo. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about that style. And you mentioned seeing somebody at Winfield that kind of inspired you. I would love to hear a little bit more about what that style is and where you fit into that of the pantheon of auto harp players.
Yeah, so I happen to have a harp here, that might be helpful. It might be a helpful instructional thing here.
Yeah.
So, the auto harp has these chord bars, and they have these like little blocks of felt underneath. You hold a button against the strings, and it dampens out the notes that aren't in a chord. So it's super easy. You can, push a button and strum like that. But to do a finger style is hard. It's actually really kind of tricky because you want to do kind of finger style, and you have to be changing the chord buttons around every time you need to get a note that's not in your main chord, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
How
people
many
think,
strings
well,
are
it's 37.
37. Oh my gosh.
37.
I thought 5 strings were
Right?
tough.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's something that, you can access really easily as a strumming instrument, but the finger style is kind of insane, actually.
Agreed. Well, you make it
But
sound
I
effortless.
really love it. I've been playing since I was 16. I think that's when I started playing the auto harp, and I was already pretty good at playing fingerstyle and classical guitar, so that transferred. That really kind of made sense to me to do it like that. Fortunately.
And when you play, you usually play with picks, right?
Yeah, exactly. I usually do banjo picks. I do like Dunlop or Pro Pick and a thumb pick, just to make the volume out a little better.
And how long has that style been kind of been practiced, on that instrument? Is that something that's relatively new or old or?
It's kind of interesting because the auto harp was invented as a derivative of the zither, and the chord bars were the kind of unique thing that got the patent. But it's actually documented that people were playing melody style like right away and trying to find ways of writing it down and doing tablature for it.
Wow.
And this is like back in the 1880s, 90s, and things like that. And it was used for popular music. And there was like a really huge concert auditorium grand, kind of model that they wanted to have in orchestras, but not really. So after it kind of lost its like initial shine, it landed really firmly in the Appalachian Mountain area. So that's why we associate it with that kind of music. Originally, though, it was just like this real Tin Pan Alley pop music kind of instrument, but it kind of was relegated to the Appalachians. So with like the Carter family is where we really see it rising back up into the popular world in the 20s, 30s, and 40s with Sarah and Maybelle, and doing some real basic melody playing. But I really give a lot of credit to my friend Brian Bowers for bringing it forward into the public as a very advanced melody playing instrument. So I heard him playing Blackberry Blossom on it, and I went, I want to do that. Let me try that, because I didn't want to just strum because I already played guitar. Why would I need another strummy, thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I mean, a lot of eighth notes in that melody. And so for those of you who have ever tried playing Blackberry Blossom on any other instrument, fiddle or mandolin or banjo, that is really impressive. And I look forward. We'll make sure to link to Brian or find some information about him that we can share in our show notes at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
Yes,
Great.
indeed. And if you have any questions or comments as we go, I know Chris just chimed in to say to give props to Mother Mabel Carter. And so feel free to throw them in the live chat as we go today. And it can be any questions about the songs we listen to, or again, technical things related to playing the auto harp, because we don't have an international auto harp champion on the show every week. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It really is. I'm super excited too because of your love of the production, and you certainly had some opinions. You mentioned wanting the analog warmth and
Yeah.
picking the 2-inch tape. Was there anything else about the studio sessions for this record that kind of fall in that same kind of category where you wanted to make sure it sounded a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy to handle like all the production chores for this. I
Hmm.
wanted to I had some very specific things and specific people that I wanted to be involved with. Tony for one. We'll hear Tim Britton on the bagpipes a little bit later. Uh, but I definitely wanted the analog warmth before we mastered to digital. Uh, the studio that I worked with was Entercore in Minneapolis. It's now defunct, down on Nicollet Avenue, probably around like 36th, 37th ish, probably by Driftwood. I don't know, I don't remember anymore.
Okay.
But they were a really great studio, and the engineer that was affiliated with the studio, Randy Burdell, and I got together and I talked with him, and I shared my vision for the project, and he was on board. He was a younger guy who was like really, really sharp. And so we went with this, and he was a joy to work with. Um, and he got what I was doing, which is
Cool.
always super important. Um, and I knew, I vinyl was out. I mean, that was not an option. Like, it's come back around, so I wish I could have done a vinyl,
Yeah.
you know. But we got as close to that kind of warmth that of the natural acoustic sound as I could get, and just like trying to line up all the sessions, and doing the whole production chore was just a blast. I just love doing it.
That's
Yeah, a lot of
great.
project management when you have a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah,
players. And when you're recording to tape, it really matters what order you do
yeah,
stuff in.
right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the players, we teased this earlier in these pictures, some great pictures of a couple local Twin Cities musicians who were prominent on this record.
Mhm.
I recognize Tom Schaefer there and
Who's
Pete.
still very active in
Yeah,
the
as
scene.
well as Pete Matheson.
Mhm.
And how did you connect with those guys? And were they part of your kind of touring band at the time?
Yeah, definitely. So Pete was one of the first guys that I met when I moved to the Twin Cities in '89. We were actually in a jug band together called Catfish Row, like ROE, right? Okay, so
Nice.
uh, and we did the whole jug band contest, and we actually opened for the Jayhawks once
Oh, cool.
at the in it wasn't Palmer's, but not the, well, I think we were actually at the Uptown. We opened for the Jayhawks. Anyway, so he and I really connected early on. And Tom, I think I met probably around in '91. I did old time. I did Irish. And I think I had an Irish gig booked, and Tom was kind of like your go-to fiddle guy.
Mm.
And so, or maybe '90 or '91, both of those guys weren't available to chime in tonight. Otherwise, I would be like going, "What was it?" Um, but I had Tom over. We were rehearsing, and he is like warming up, and I'm in the kitchen getting us some beverages, and he's in the living room. I'm like, "Oh my god, I've got Kevin Burke in my living room." He was like so good. He's so
Yes.
good at whatever style he puts his hand to. So uh, this was around the time of the album. We had this photo shoot, and we were playing at Winfield it was basically my album release was kind of at Winfield, right? So it was that same year, and that was it. And Pete had this canvas cover, like in a cow spot kind of theme there
It's
on
amazing.
his on
So
his
cool.
on his bass. Yeah, so that was in '93, and we basically launched the album at Winfield.
That's so great. If you're just listening to the podcast form of this episode, there's some amazing pictures we're looking at. We're seeing this debut of the band here in Winfield with Pete Matheson's cow bass, and we have this other picture with a matching shirt that Karen
Right.
is sporting. And if you're just listening, we'll be putting these photos in the show notes at backcataloglistingparty.com. But Karen, I got to know, tell us a little bit more about this coordination here.
it's all about the fashion. It doesn't matter how you sound, it's how you look, right? We all know that. So
I love it.
I don't know which came first, but we had it together.
I also love that you could actually be totally camouflaged in front of the bass. So if you wanted to look invisible and be like, no one can find me, I'll just stand right in front of the bass in that shirt because, oh my gosh,
Yes,
that's amazing.
really, I should have done that.
I love it. I love it.
Those guys are just great. I can't say enough about them. They're just awesome.
Yeah, and Jocelyn chimed in, moving experience. Oh, Jocelyn. Yeah, that's right. That glass of white wine kicking in.
Hey there, would you like to be part of the live show? Well, become a member of the Back Catalog Listening Party Patreon, and you'll get a backstage pass to weekly online tapings where you can ask the artist questions and participate in the live chat with a fun community of like-minded music nerds. You'll also get a first look at upcoming guests and receive invitations to special live streams and private after parties. So join the party today at patreon.com/Back Catalog Listening Party.
Yeah, this is so great. So many great stories, and we're going to dig more into them, but I want to get more music.
Yes.
And the next track that you picked to feature is the Aran boat song, kind of channeling more of those Celtic roots. Anything you want to tell us about this tune or arrangement?
Yeah, so this has Jacqueline Eltan on the cello, and this was absolutely one of my favorite tracks that we ended up with. I think we did it at night. We just really kind of chilled out, and she laid into it with that cello part, and it's just gorgeous.
All right.
And Tom is on the fiddle. I think it's just the three of us. I think it's just Autoharp, fiddle, and cello on this one.
All right, well, let's give it a spin. This is Karen Mueller, Aran Boat Song here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Aran Boat
Yeah.
Song. That was Karen Mueller and Jacqueline Alton and Tom Schaefer doing that beautiful rendition. And you can find it on Karen Mueller's 1993 album Clarity. And I'll tell you, I'm listening on these headphones and cranking them up, and the clarity is amazing on this recording. I just want to say, so if you're listening to the podcast and you're liking it as much as folks are liking it, the comments are going on fire over here. Then you need to get the high res files or buy the CD or even cassette. We heard a rumor, Karen, that you might have some tapes in storage as well. So
there may be some cassettes out there, tapes and tapes. Yeah, there you go.
We've got visual
We had
proof
to
here.
do it all. We had to do it all. Yeah,
Now,
I just really love what happened with that. And Randy, the engineer, was like, he was just like going nuts. And when we had the mastering session, that ended up being like the biggest moment, on the recording. We just had that maxed out as much as we could for what we were working with.
yeah, it sounds so great. And you can get them all at KarenMueller.com. This album sounding so good.
it really does sound good. I'll second what Ellen said. We always say that, every week, you really should get the high res files, and you really should try to listen to it the way it was meant to be heard. But this in particular, with your attention to the details and keeping it analog up till the very end, it really does make a difference. And so I just want to throw my voice in there too. Go buy the record or the cassette. Did it go? Now you mentioned it getting digitally mastered for the CD. Is the cassette like direct? Was it just part of? Was it tape to tape?
That's a really good question. It may be tape to tape. It really might, because
Collector's item.
We didn't need to digitize it. Yeah.
I'm just
saying. It was all done in house. It was all done in house by Precision. So they had my master and they just did it. Yeah.
I know tapes are making a resurgence, and Karen mentioned, again, it's not on her website, but she still might have some tapes floating around. So if you head on over to KarenMueller.com, maybe find the contact info and send her a note if you want that tape to tape, all analog signal path.
Yeah, it's
totally
right. And also, when you're on her website, you can see that she is very busy performing. She has dates in California, North Carolina, Oregon, Kansas. And also, you teach as well when you're not busy performing and recording. And you mentioned you played guitar before you played Autoharp, and you're a great guitarist. But you play a few other stringed things, and I think you teach them. Do you want to mention what those are?
Sure. Yeah. So I do guitar and mandolin and ukulele are the three others besides autoharp, and then the lap dulcimer. I think we're going to be getting to do we have a dulcimer track on our playlist? I don't know. But yeah, so I do all of those. And, since 2020, I've been teaching entirely on Zoom. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can just like join me right here in my studio. And we can work it out. So there's also been some really great large festivals that are all online. And one is called the Quarantune, and started in 2020. It's just thriving and building. There are like 50 instructors and workshops, concerts. And the next one is coming up the first weekend in June. And I'm always involved with that.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, you can find out all the details at KarenMueller.com. I noticed one of the only stringed instruments that you don't teach is the banjo. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I got you covered.
Yeah, I was going to say Anthony Ihrig can take care of all your banjo needs as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like playing with skilled fiddlers and skilled banjo players. I don't need to do that. I just appreciate what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, boy, did you get a crew on this record.
Yeah. I mean, the players on this are so great. And I also love the repertoire because, we heard your take on old Joe Clark, kind of like the old timey vibes, but yet, with some bluegrass banjo styles in there, Aran Boat Song, beautiful melodic Celtic tune. And then, but you covered, as you mentioned, Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. You have You have some more contemporary tunes in there as well. Leo Kotke's in there. So were these just tunes that you were playing at the time, and you think, oh, these are the best of the ones, or was there more thought of like how would they go together?
So, when you're putting together an album, you have to think about the playlist and how they go together. But uh, overall, it was what songs do I love the most, and what do I want to share? So, I've always loved playing Leo Kotke's Mona Roy.
Hmm.
Is it Mona Roy or Mona Ray? Mona Ray. he did a Mona Roy later, but so no, Mona Ray is a super fun one to play, and for sure, I didn't want to be pigeonholed in any one genre, because I think music is music, and it's really important to play what really turns you on the most. So I had see anything else. So I also covered Chris Williamson's
Mm.
song "Sister" on the lap dulcimer with Jackie Alton, also playing cello on that. And uh, so things come to me from like kind of different sources. I had a student that really wanted to learn how to play "Sister" on the dulcimer, so I worked it out in great detail, and I realized that it was such a beautiful song that I wanted to share that. So things just come to me from different sources, and it's all good. It's all music.
Yeah. Well, and it's
Hmm.
all good music on this album. So no clunkers on this record. So we're going to get to as many of them as we can on today's show. And this next tune is a couple tunes, actually. Blarney Pilgrim and Humours of Ennistymon. Is that right?
Correct. So those are two really famous jigs. Ennistymon is a town on the west coast of Ireland, and these are going to be a trio between myself and Pete Matheson on the bass, and Timothy Britton on the uilleann pipes, which is the Irish
Hmm.
bagpipe, which is driven by a bellows with the elbow. Uilleann is it's spelled something crazy like Eulalian,
Yeah,
it's a Gaelic,
Right.
right?
Uilleann,
Right.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of blowing into a pipe, it's done with the elbow. So there's all this activity going on, with the
Hmm.
torso. And Tim is just one of the best of the best. Originally from Philadelphia, and then he landed in Fairfield, Iowa, and I met him when I was living in Kansas and was playing in an Irish group there. I had two bands, as I mentioned earlier, and one was a really progressive Irish band. And so I met Tim there, and I was just kind of midway between Kansas and Minnesota. So when I was thinking about who I would really love to hear on this album, I thought of Tim. So he plays on a couple of tracks on Clarity. He came up for it. And so it was kind of like I wanted to create a playlist that I would enjoy listening to of people that I like to hear.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
All
that's
right.
the way
Well,
to do it.
yeah, yeah, and we're all going to enjoy it now. This is Karen Mueller, Blarney Pilgrim, and Humours of Ennistymon here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I was dancing a
Woo.
jig there in my chair. Blarney Pilgrim and Humours of Ennistymon, version done by Karen Mueller on her 1993 album Clarity. And the Elan pipes are that she was talking about. I love the sound of the Elan pipes. I think it's because it feels like here's a picture we're sharing right here for folks who are trying to picture
There you
what it
go.
is. So
Great. Yeah,
so the bellows are strapped to your elbow, and apparently that's actually where the name comes from. It literally means like pipe of the elbow or something. Um,
exactly right.
and
Hmm.
but what I love about them is that they're like a gentler version of the bagpipes. Like they're not quite as loud, and they're not as the drone isn't as heavy. It doesn't take over a room. I don't know if that's why they were invented for pub situations, but I do know that like I would not want to be right next to a bagpipe player in a pub in a Kaylee or something.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a real distinctive kind of style that the uilleann pipes have. They can have some real percussive kind of elements. I also want to throw it out there that the majority of the work on the album was done live. Like
Hmm.
we're all in the studio together. We're taking it, track by track. We're not overdubbing. And I had decided at the onset that I wasn't going to overdub myself playing any tracks. I had done that on my EP Upbeat, and I decided I wanted it just to be as totally live as possible. And so
Wow.
if we needed to retake a track, we all retook the
Oh,
track.
wow.
You know,
Wow, that's really impressive. I mean, the
yeah,
technical stuff you were doing on there, holy smokes. Now, were you isolated from
right,
each other? Did you have a
yeah,
little isolation at least?
yeah.
Okay.
We were in little ISO booths and stuff like that, but we had eye contact, so we could still
Oh,
kind of be
man.
jamming together. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it
That's
really does give it that, there's a feeling that you get when it's live, there's these
You're
subtle
like you
shifts
can
in tempo
play.
and
You're playing off each other. You're like
yeah.
responding in real time. Tim also played with me on my Still Point CD that I did as a
Mm.
follow up to this one, and it's just lovely working with him.
Yeah, and Jocelyn said was tapping my foot and nodding my head the whole time. Yeah, great, great dancing tune. And I've been really struck listening to this album again, even though I actually I have the CD copy right here. I've enjoyed it for many years, but listening to the tracks kind of next to each other. And the different instrumentation, I was just realizing how sympathetic the auto harp is to all these other like instruments and tones. I mean, like not every instrument can play in a stripped down setting with like uilleann pipes and then like cello and
Yeah.
then with like banjo and fiddle. Like it feels like it fits right in there. And I don't know if that's the arrangements or your beautiful playing or if that's like a feature of the auto harp, but I'm really struck by that.
Well, that was one of my considerations in producing and arranging for the album is that I did not have any guitar on the album because the guitar and the autoharp fill the same kind of sonic space. So I didn't want anything to muddy it up. So the
Mhm.
autoharp is serving as both a lead instrument and as the backing instrument. And if we needed the low end, then we brought the bass in.
Yeah. Or and the cello too. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
that's really neat. Chris had a question. Karen, off the wall thought, have you ever gotten dressed up and played a Renaissance festival?
Of course I have, Chris. Yes, of course I have.
What kind of question is that?
So when I was still in Kansas, after I graduated from the University of Kansas, and I stayed in Lawrence for 3.5 more years because I had this great band and then another great band, and I had a job at a jewelry studio because I was an art history and art major, and I did jewelry. And we played at the Kansas City Ren Fest every year. So I had my vest and my little pants and gypsy pants, and we played the Ren Fest. Yes, we did.
Excellent.
Well, and I would think the
Excellent.
Yeah.
jewelry, making your own jewelry combined with all the music you do on acoustic instruments kind of, make you really ready for something like a Ren Fest. So
It does. It does. It was great.
the Back Catalog Listening Party is brought to you by EFS Publicity. Founded by veteran publicist, promoter, DJ, and musician Ellen Stanley, EFS brings an artist's perspective to the table, working to help clients get to the next level in their career. Services include national and international media campaigns, radio promotions, tour press, crowdfunding, grant writing, and more. Get a quote or set up a consultation today at efspublicity.com. Well, if you just joined us again, Karen Mueller has been joining us live today on the Back Catalog Listening Party. We've been revisiting her 1993 album, Clarity, which is available on her website if you want to get CD copies, or if you want to hunt down one of those rare cassette copies, you can contact her at karenmueller.com. And she also has a great catalog of other projects which you can check out as well. We're going to get to at least one more tune before the end of today's show. But before we do, I want to thank some of the folks that make this show possible. If you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering, how do I get in on that live chat? How do I join the live taping so I can ask Karen about festivals and wearing gypsy pants? Well, how you get the invitation is you join our Patreon, and this is a community of supporters that have kept this show going for over 5 years and have ushered in various versions of the show, including this new podcast version. So we want to thank these folks who make it all possible and who get to join us for the live tapings as well. Penny, Ann, Alinta, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Becky, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Nikki, Joni, David, CJ, Wiley, Stephanie, Christy, Diane, Hetty, Sandy, Neighbor Ann, BZ, Alyssa, and maybe you. If you'd like to join the party, you can go to patreon.com/back catalog listening party. And one of the things you can get in addition to invitations to the live tapings, you also get first look at all the guests. You get invited to special online after parties. And while supplies last, the Back Catalog Listening Party pint glass. Tony's is empty now. The sign of a good.
Oh man,
yeah,
I got to get me one of those.
Yeah.
Oh well, we can hook you up, Karen.
Yeah, we got you covered. And and then you can also and there's also a free option to join our Patreon and just get first look at what's happening on the podcast and upcoming guests. So lots of different ways to support the show, but mainly thank you for listening. If you like the show, you can review it and subscribe to it and share it with a friend.
Yeah, goes a long way. Sends more people to Karen and independent artists like her.
Yeah, and so we want to get to at least one more song here, and I think the next one up is Blackberry Blossom. Is there, which you referred to earlier in this show? Is there anything you want to say before we take a listen?
I have so much to say about Blackberry Blossom.
Say it.
So that's the first song that I actually taught myself how to play on the Autoharp by listening to Brian Bauer's record to figure out how melody playing works on the Autoharp. And it's just been my touchstone. So I've recorded it at least 4 different times in different configurations. And this one with Tony is one that I arranged to be just a duet. So it's just me and the banjo. And I have an intro that we're trading off little parts. And bear in mind that we did that because over the miles, I recorded it on my 2-inch reel-to-reel, and he filled in the gaps. Da 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 da. We did that call and answer like that, but not in the same room.
And this was not. So this was pre like there probably wasn't a click track on one of those, right? I mean,
we did not. We did not have a click track on it. We just were like. We were just so metronomic that we could do it. But it was interesting when the reel-to-reel came back via FedEx the next day. And it had to be next day because it was in the middle of summer and I didn't want it to melt, and the heat it was like Christmas. Okay, what did Tony give me? And he had, he had this really great start and then it just stops. And then he has like 3 different tracks that I can choose from and mix from. So he stops in this one and then he kind of starts in this other one. And so this brings us into the mixing story.
All right.
Let's listen. But like it's kind of midway through his solo that I had to splice 2 versions together when he's in the middle of all this frenetic run of eighth notes. And it still haunts me today. Whenever I get to that point, I'm going, and we're there. So I just want to give a big shout out to not only Randy Burdell for being my primary engineer, but Jill Anania, who lives like right here in the Twin Cities, was my secondary engineer, and I brought her in for the mixing. And as well as doing one of the Irish tunes that we had to go to custom studio for the grand piano. But Jill is she has some of the best ears in the business, period. She was Michael Hedges' guitar tech when he was on the road, and she's still at it. And she wanted to be here today, but she had another conflict. But she and I were sharing stories like, when I had finished the tracking, Randy tells me, by the way, Intercore Studio is going to be closing in a couple of weeks. So I came the
Oh
next
boy.
day, and there were little price tags on the equipment.
Gosh.
I was joking, like, is there a price tag on the toilet? What is, it's all going away. So Randy Burdell, I let him find another place for us to mix, and he chose Blackberry Way because the replacements had recorded there, and he was so, but the mixing board there was a little old and it was a little cranky. So there was like little pops and stuff like that. And it was all done by, look at me, I'm doing sliders. So I got Jill on that. So we had 6 hands. We had to have in real time, and we're mixing this down to the digital.
Wow.
Here we go.
That is amazing. Wow. These are the kinds of things that really make you listen to a song in a different way. And I'm definitely going to be listening for that wherever you took that razor blade to the tape and put it in. I'm
so
listening.
Yeah. So I'll do it. I'll be doing it. Right there, okay.
So look for Karen's cue if you're watching
the
on
YouTube video version. Karen's going to let us know. What a fantastic way to close out our hour here. This is Karen Mueller with Blackberry Blossom on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Fantastic.
Oh, so good. And I have to say, if you did make a motion on the YouTube video of where that splice happened, and I would never have been able to tell.
No.
It was like perfection.
Wow.
It was so organic, and we were just like going. It wasn't it was a how did we do it? I don't think we spliced it, but we just had to switch from channel to channel like that. Anyway.
Wow. People were loving it. Susan says, wonderful.
Yay!
Jocelyn just says,
Wee!
wee.
I love that. Kind of like a roller coaster.
It
The
was
hands
a
in the air.
roller
Right.
coaster. And, man, I mean, I was just thinking about the editing with that many eighth notes going on and the kind of syncopation that Tony Trischka was doing there. I mean, that is just, you should win a Grammy just for the editing alone, let alone the playing here. That was amazing.
It was crazy. Yeah, we were doing it like into the middle of the night, and then we'd go out for Thai food, and we'd come back in, and we'd like, whoa, do it again. I had a gig in like Sioux Falls like the next day, and I forgot my picks. I was just so it was so intense.
What have you listened back to this recently, or what are your thoughts listening to this after so many years?
I think it really holds up, and I'm very happy about that because I love the music that I did on it, and I could say, well, I think I may be able to play better now, but I think that energy, I just really wanted to capture this energy that I had then, and in the summer, and this like it was just really fun. It was super fun.
Well, I think
you can feel it.
I think you captured that very well. And one of the great things about just doing a really a stripped down acoustic folk record and whatever subgenres are in there is like it's not, you don't listen to this and say, oh, that was a 90s record, which some even in the
Right.
folk genres you can kind of tell, like,
There's that one reverb on that snare drum.
This is like really timeless because you had it so but that analog feel, it makes it feel like it could have been recorded in the 60s or today, and anywhere in between. So it sounds great. Get this album if you don't already have it for your collection. Go to KarenMueller.com. You can pick up this album, any of Karen's other wonderful projects. You can check out tour dates and learn if you want to take lessons on any stringed instrument that doesn't have bows or banjos. Then you can hit up Karen for that. And mainly, thank you, Karen, for spending this hour with us to talk about this really cool project and all that went into the recording.
Thanks so much for having me. I've totally enjoyed it and love what you guys do and appreciate it so much and appreciate your Patreons. So thanks a bunch.
Awesome.
And thanks to all of you, for whether you joined us for the live taping or you're listening on the podcast. We appreciate your ears. Go and support artists like Karen. Connie says, fabulous show, much too short. I agree. We'll just have to have Karen back on again. And we'll be back here next week with another edition of Back Catalog Listening Party with another great guest artists revisiting one of their old records. Until then, enjoy the music, support the music, and support the artists that make it. Thank you so much for being with us and have a wonderful music-filled week.
All right. Cheers, everybody. See you next week.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Back Catalog Listening Party. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, which helps more people discover our show and our guests.
And do you want to be a part of the live show, get a first look at upcoming guests, and receive invites to private online parties and live streams? Then join our Patreon community at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
Have a great week. We'll see you back here next Friday for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party.